Hi, my name is Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the 33rd in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Films, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, as well as the newest Pixar animated film, The Incredibles 2. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is regular and semi-regular guest at this point, AJ.
Thanks for having me back.
How's it going to see you again? It's only been a week.
Yeah, but it was a good week. And I'm happy to be back.
Sure. So this is an episode we've been talking about for quite a long time, actually, because we've had discussions about what we consider to be the best film ever. And my go-to was obviously the default answer, Citizen Kane. And you decided to take the contrarian and say that it was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Well, because, everybody says Citizen Kane. It's obviously a great movie. It's hard to take that down, but I just wanted to go with something that felt a little more unique to my taste. And so the thing that was at the top of my head at the time was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Defend yourself, good sir.
Well, upon rewatch, I feel like I can, because it really is just such a well-crafted, emotional movie with amazing performances and, just such a tight, fascinating story.
I feel like I'm going to be taking the Ebert stance on this, so... I thought the movie was very good. I don't think it's all-time great material.
How dare you, sir? No, this is genuinely probably in my top 10 best films ever made.
I mean,
I don't have that list in my head, but if off the top of my head, it really is one of.
I eagerly await your argument, friend, but I want to do my takedown on it now. So I like the movie. It's obviously, it earns its place as a good movie, but I think that the movie, it's elevated by the quality of several of its scenes, but I don't think that the movie has a strong enough undercurrent going through it to keep it totally functional. I mean, obviously there's a lot of anti-establishment themes, and there's a lot of commentary on mental health of the 70s. And you can kind of see strains of that in there, and it's interesting stuff. And there's a lot of great character performances. Jack Nicholson's great. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of young actors getting early performances.
Well, young.
Well, then
early
young.
In their career.
Yeah,
I don't know how young.
Christopher Lloyd, Danny DeVito get younger in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The actress who plays Nurse Ratched is, of course,
Louise Fletcher.
Yes, she's amazing. But the things I remember from this movie are the individual scenes more than I remember the plot. I remember I think my favorite scene in the movie is it's early on. It's the scene when Jack Nicholson wants to get everyone excited to watch the World Series, and it just turns into this contest between him and Nurse Ratched, who wants to just keep everything orderly and not change anything, and he's just running around the room screaming, swearing, trying to get that one more vote to give people. That way he can convince Nurse Ratched. We get majority of people want to watch the World Series. We're going to change it, and he can't do it in time. And Nurse Ratched just shuts him out. And he finally gets his vote, and because she's so litigious and she's so willing to just throw him under the bus and just not play to him at all, she just ignores him and just makes him put up with it. And he kind of ends up faking watch the World Series, just by sitting in front of a blank TV and getting the whole room riled up, and just to kind of protest. And it's a great little scene of just fight the establishment, man. We're gonna do our thing.
Well, very much so. It does. That scene kind of does sum up the theme of the movie. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest may be the quintessential 70s film. It's just post-Vietnam, down with the man. The rebels are the good guys. And
I don't know, man. There's a lot of that's a common theme in 70s movies. Though.
It is, but this is I think one of the strongest cases for it, or not for the politics aside, just for being one of the quintessential 70s movies and kind of capturing the feeling of the time.
I don't know
Not
if
that I
this
was
movie has
there.
a specific political stance other than Nurse Ratched sucks, but
I think it's, well, like you said, it's incredibly
well,
anti-establishment.
that meant something then. That means something different now.
Well, absolutely.
Anti-establishment is kind of a vague sentiment.
Very
So
true, but at the time it was very, very kind of very at the forefront of people's minds,
sure.
just where politics was at the time.
I mean, obviously, art comes from context, so that's
Very much so.
where it sits in terms of that. But just being vaguely anti-establishment now, you understand the value of it, but it doesn't have the immediate social context because as I said, our anti-establishment is completely different than theirs. But
Very much so. Well, it's been 40 years.
yeah, but I love that. As I said, we both agree that scene is amazing. But
Absolutely.
and there's other scenes in that movie too that I really like too. The boat fishing scene. That's
Yeah, the scene where they commandeer a fishing boat.
yeah, that's fun.
The scene where he's teaching Chief to play basketball, and that's really, you really start to see Chief as a character there, and it's just such a heartwarming scene.
Sure, I mean, there's lots of great things like that in the movie, but every time I watch it, the undercurrent just isn't strong enough, I think, to hold up all these individual scenes. Like I never really get a full sense of the character arcs. It's more about this movie kind of unfolding and watching these scenes play out more than it is to me about the film as a whole. I mean, it does build to fruition with the final scene, which is very famous, which is kind of the ultimate anti-establishment statement. It's better to be dead than part of the establishment, but
yeah, it's well, never mind. I was gonna
Well,
ruin.
no, I don't wanna
I was
spoil-
gonna
let's
ruin
not-
another movie
No.
by
Yeah,
showing the end of this.
let's
but,
spoil this movie by spoiling another movie you must see.
But no, I think what you're saying is all these scenes all contributes to the overarching theme that is, you know, the protagonist of the movie, McMurphy, played by Jack Nicholson, versus the establishment, embodied by Nurse Ratched, excuse me.
Freudian slip.
Played by Louise Fletcher. And that, I think you just agreed that is the theme of the movie, and I think all of these scenes contribute to that and make the whole equal to the sum of its parts.
Yeah, but that's why I agree it's a good movie. But I don't think it transcends it and builds off of it enough to be a all-time great movie. I mean, it's 33 in the lineup of the AFI list. I mean, that's nothing to stick your nose
it's
up
also
at, but
one of 3 movies to win the Big Five of the Academy Awards. You know, Milos Forman for director, Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher, and then screenplay and Best Picture.
Oscars are irrelevant.
Oh, and AFI is the be end all of
AFI is
criticism.
convenient. It's not. I don't think it's definitive, but
well, same with the Academy.
okay. I don't want to get into a fight about the Academy, but the Academy is wrong about everything. So
I don't think it was wrong that year. And that was a strong year. If you
What
look
else
at the
was that
movies
year?
came out. Let's see. Dog Day Afternoon, I think, was in there. Barry Lyndon, I think, was in the Best Picture, which it's Kubrick's one of his weaker films, but still worth watching. Nashville, I think, was that year.
I would have
Altman's
thought
Nashville.
Nashville's kind of the one that's like survived critically, just because
I disagree. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Dog Day Afternoon.
I see Nashville more frequently on all-time like the critic versions of all-time great lists than I do Cuckoo's Nest. At least.
Well, those aren't my lists, are they?
At least it's on the list of people who are just like, you know, the greatest film of all time is clearly Man with a Camera. it's that kind of critic.
Yeah.
Anyone want to have a gentle discussion about Italian neorealism with me?
But yeah, I really do think that every part of, you know, the scenes that we talked about, the overall direction, the script, the performances do make it one of the best movies of all time, in my opinion.
What transcends it to you? What makes it more than the sum of its parts?
Well, I can't really go off of anything, besides the technical achievements of it, than the way it just affects me personally. And um, I mean,
I mean,
I've never.
not that I want to disparage you, sir, but you don't seem exactly like you're rather straight laced. You don't strike me as a anti-establishment fellow in most.
Well, I'm really not, and that kind of doesn't that speak more to the quality of the movie, that it still affects me, even though I disagree with kind of the ultimate
It might.
themes of the movie. And another thing, like we were talking about, I am not inherently anti-establishment, so I don't necessarily see Nurse Ratched as this ultimate villain, but I still appreciate the conflict between the two characters, and I think it's done masterfully.
I love that discussion we had when we watched the movie. It's just like I don't get why everyone hates Nurse Ratched. And I'm like, I can tell you exactly why everyone hates Nurse Ratched.
She's just doing her job.
She's malevolent. She's gaming the system on Jack Nicholson.
She enjoys power, but at the same time, like I said, she has reasons for the decisions she makes and kind of the roadblocks she puts up in McMurphy's path.
Man, this movie makes me feel like a hippie. So that's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the next segment where we'll be discussing Incredibles 2. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the show. We're going to talk about Incredibles 2. So, what are your thoughts?
14 years, and seems like it was worth the wait.
Really? Was this exactly what you wanted, or what did you want from this?
I don't really spend a lot of time speculating like what exactly I want in a sequel. I'm content with whatever the director gives me, and then I go from there, like whether or not I feel like it fit, and I think this absolutely did.
Okay. I mean, this is a weird episode because I think my thoughts on Incredibles 2 are basically the same as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, in that.
Well, this time I'm not saying it's one of the best of all time.
Well, no, but it's the same criticism. It's that I think this is it's a pretty good movie. It's not transcendently. It's not as good as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in terms, like, obviously because of two different measurements altogether. But it has the same problem where it's a bunch of cool ideas that don't build. It's much worse than this. It doesn't necessarily build to a central statement, whereas in Cuckoo's Nest, obviously it builds to a theme. But this, I think that it's a lot more muddled in terms of what it's ultimately trying to say about the characters. I mean, I'm a big Brad Bird guy. Like, have you seen all 6 of his movies now, or?
I have to list them up. I know I've seen Iron Giant, First Incredibles, Ratatouille, and now this.
Mission Impossible 4 and Tomorrowland.
I haven't seen Tomorrowland.
Okay.
That's the one I haven't seen.
Okay. I mean, Brad Bird he has a weird career path because his first 3 films, I think most people all 3 of his animated films are excellent.
I would agree.
Yeah, and then he kind of swapped into live action with Mission Impossible 4, which I like. I know that there's a lot of people that don't like it.
At the time, I think people were claiming it as the best Mission Impossible movie of the time.
There's some people. I thought so too. I mean, there's no sense of
it's definitely
what the best Mission Impossible movie
is. It's definitely competent as an action movie. It delivers on its thrills.
Sure. And then Tomorrowland,
which Brad Bird does amazingly as a director, and proves that even more so in Incredibles 2.
And Tomorrowland came out, and it was incredibly muddled and strange. And I'm watching Incredibles 2, I'm very confused as to why he wanted to make it 14 years later. I mean, I get the sense that he might have been having some like career problems after Tomorrowland, and he'd been probably getting calls from Pixar for the past decade and a half. He's like, come back and make Incredibles 2, and he's like, well, now that I'm out of the job, I have a great idea we can go with. But
I mean, that's entirely possible, but
I get the sense that he was happy with the first movie. Like, he didn't necessarily want to revisit it.
It's I don't know. I'm not Brad Bird. I can't really speak
to
where his head is
we're
at.
psychoanalyzing a man for his art, so.
Purely based on speculation, I think he clearly set up a sequel with the end of the first Incredibles, and so I think he definitely left the door open for a sequel. Um, However, the timing worked out. I think 14 years later is better than 24 years later. So I'm content as a cucumber.
I was surprised that he just went with an immediate sequel. Like I and a lot of people had assumed that he was going to do like a time lapse sequel where it cuts to like 10 years in the future and we get to see the adult versions of all these characters. But
well, it's kind of the beauty of animation. The actors have all aged 14 years, but you can animate the family to be the same. It's just a day later essentially, and
it's minutes later and like literally.
True. But the following events are in the next few days. Then you can do that in animation. I think why not capitalize on that if there's more of a story to tell specifically in that time? Do I think it had to be an immediate sequel? No, but I think it worked fine.
Sure. I mean, at the risk of making it sound like I didn't like the movie, I'd say I liked it as much as I liked Finding Dory, which I liked too. But
I liked it considerably more than I liked Finding Dory.
Yeah, it's better than that. But it's that kind of sequel to me where it's doing something similar to the first film and it's exploring a lot of the themes, but it's doing it slightly differently. But it doesn't quite congeal into its own thing. Like by the end of the sequel, I didn't entirely get what they were trying to go with in terms of exploring more of the characters beyond just taking a bunch of really interesting ideas, like exploring more about Mrs. Incredible's idea, like her idea.
Elastigirl.
Yeah, we're getting more into understanding Elastigirl, getting to see how Jack evolves his powers. And there's so many great just ideas in here, like getting to see Jack bond with what's her name, the woman who designs the costumes. I forget.
Oh, Edna Mode.
Yeah, seeing Edna Mode and Jack bond was the best.
And Jack and the raccoon in the backyard. Jack stole the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a big fan of the digital, or not the digital
Jack
short.
Attack?
Yeah, the short that came with the first Incredible. So this kind of felt like a continuation of that in addition to the first movie.
That's required viewing if you like the first movie.
Absolutely. Oh, it's fantastic. I also love what they did with Violet's character, kind of growing in her self-confidence from the first movie. Really, one of my only problems with the movie is they didn't really do much with Dash, the son in the family.
He got a lot to do in the first movie, though. So,
yes, kind of. But that was Mr. Incredible's movie. This was Mrs. Incredible's movie. But there still needs to be enough of a role for the supporting cast, being the kids. I think they absolutely did more with him in the first one. I don't think they did anything with him in the second one, and I was disappointed by that.
I'm fine with I'm fine with one or two characters slipping under the radar.
Well, because if you give me a Fantastic Four movie, I don't want I don't want it to be Sue and Richard Storm. I don't want like the whole movie to be about them, and then like Human Torch gets 2 scenes. I want to see all of them in action, and even in the action scenes, I felt like Dash was really kind of toned down, which was disappointing. There was one great shot that Brad Bird set up with the character, I can't remember her name, but played by Sophia Bush, that created the portals. And it had Dash. Oh
yeah,
had Dash running through the portal and kind of running after himself. It's one of those you can't really describe the shot. You just have to see it for yourself.
It looks like Portal from the video game Portal.
Very much, and that's not a bad thing at all, sir.
That's such a millennial superhero.
That was an excellent shot. Really, the only problem I had with the movie delves into spoiler territory. But
Spoiler.
just with the development of the villain in this movie, I thought it was very predictable. I was disappointed by that.
I saw it coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
Like my only surprise was which person ended up being, because I thought it was either going to be one or the other, and I thought they were setting it up as a more obvious thing, and they went with the slightly less obvious one.
Well, I disagree. Well, in a sense, I think they tried to give you a misdirect in going for the more obvious choice, but if you just took literally a second to think about how the villain was being portrayed, you could tell who was behind it all ultimately. I know we're being super vague,
I mean,
just because there are some people who still haven't seen the movie, and I don't want to ruin it for them because it kind of is a twist.
yeah, but I don't think the villain reveal is the big. It's not the reason to see the film. It's not.
No, but it's it's part of it, and I think it's a part that disappointed me.
That's fair.
Only one of the few parts.
And the reason to see the film is because you want to see the family.
Yeah.
Because you want to see them bond and bounce off each other.
And they did a fairly good job of that. I was pleased with it, and the comedy hit most of the time. And yeah, I was pleased.
Yeah, the comedy does really good in this film. Like
if you're a fan of the first movie, and if you're not, God help you, you're gonna enjoy the second one.
How dare you?
I think that's the best way to put it.
What do you think about the state of? This is a slight tangent, but what do you think about the state of Pixar at this point, with like how many sequels they've made recently?
Obviously, I would enjoy more original content just because they've really, maybe with the exception of The Good Dinosaur, never, and Brave. I wasn't a huge fan of Brave. They've never really let me down with original content. It's the sequels that I've kind of been disappointed by. Cars 3, I think.
Yeah.
I'm one of the few defenders of Cars 2. I actually enjoy Cars 2.
I like the first Cars.
I do as well. But that's an original idea at the time. Now it's a trilogy.
Is it needed a trilogy?
What's the next one on the docket coming up? Is it Toy Story 4?
Yes, Toy Story 4.
There's not another one coming before that?
I don't think so. I think Toy Story 4 is next year.
Listen, they haven't let me down with a Toy Story yet, so
I don't know where you go with a Toy Story 4.
I don't either.
Are they just going to repeat the same arc where the little girl is now giving up the toys, and now they're going to have to go through the whole process of grieving again?
Like I said, I don't want to speculate on what they're going to do with the sequel. I'm perfectly content to see what they're going to do with it, and they've given me enough faith in them to really look forward to whatever they're going to present to me. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I'm losing the benefit of the doubt with Pixar because they made Inside Out and Coco, which were like the best two films they've done since Toy Story 3. And then they just keep feeding in all these bad sequels and prequels at every chance.
Well, you say bad, but they're all competent.
Monsters U is kind of meh. Good Dinosaur is meh.
But if that's the worst you can say is that they're meh, Pixar's still kind of hitting it out of the park.
Meh is the worst thing you can say about a movie, dude. Meh is worse than bad. That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the final segment where we'll be getting AJ's movie recommendation for the week. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the final segment. We're going to pass things over now to AJ for the movie recommendation this week.
Well, for my recommendation, I wanted to pay tribute to one of the great directors, Milos Forman, who directed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Passed away in April of this year,
really?
I believe. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Left behind a wonderful legacy. He's made 3 movies that I consider to be one of the best of their respective decades. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in the 70s. Amadeus in the 80s, and my recommendation for today, Man on the Moon in 1999, the Andy Kaufman biopic. Andy Kaufman is portrayed by Jim Carrey in this version in my opinion, the best performance of his career. You can throw out The Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine. And plus his more comedic roles. He's a brilliant actor, but he truly got lost in the role of Andy Kaufman in this movie. And you can check out a documentary called Jim and Andy that was released on Netflix last year that delves into kind of his process going into the role and goes behind the scenes and interviews him on it and kind of the psychological toll it took on him. He really went into the role. And it's Andy Kaufman, if you know anything about him, that's an interesting guy to kind of embody. And he really did. And the movie tracks really his whole life. It's a true biopic, from his appearances on SNL to his women's wrestling to, if you're a fan of Andy Kaufman or just outlandish outsider comedy, like this really delves into the enigma that was Andy Kaufman, and I very much recommend it. It's one of my favorite biopics.
Okay, I had not heard of that. Have you seen all the weird things like Jim Carrey does now? He'll just do interviews or be like, he'll go to award shows and be like, none of this matters. Everything matters. Nothing's real.
Well, that's kind of what the documentary that I was talking about goes into. And I don't know if I'm allowed to recommend too, but if I am, that the documentary Jim and Andy
You're breaking the format.
last year,
You're breaking the format.
it kind of goes into who he is now and kind of traces that back to how deep he went into the role back in 1999.
Okay, I didn't know Foreman was still making movies like as late as 1999. But
I believe his last movie was 2011.
Really,
I want to say.
wow, that's a like 45, 50-year career right there.
Yeah, and he was making movies in Czechoslovakia well before One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The Fireman's Ball, I believe, is one.
I've heard of that.
In the late 60s that I've been meaning to check out. It sounds like a really good movie. But yeah, every Milos Forman movie I've seen, I've absolutely loved, and so I just wanted to kind of use my recommendation to choose Man on the Moon, kind of a less talked about movie from the 90s, but also just to pay respect to his career and his legacy.
Okay, I had not really heard much about Milos Forman, so that's interesting to hear that he had such a far-reaching career.
Oh yeah, he also directed Hair, Ragtime, People versus Larry Flint.
Huh, fascinating. That's all the time we have for this episode of the show. You can find past recordings of the show at the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at @antisocialcriti, that's critic without the Z at the end. And you can find more of my written reviews at Geeks Under Grace and theantisocialcritic.tumblr.com. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.
Hello? Great news. I found us an audition.
Morning, Gloria.
Wait, you got what? I found us a posting for an audition for this really cool sounding indie drama being made by this eccentric, outsider, artistic type.
You did? Where'd you find it?
Craigslist? Look, it'll be fine. I've done gigs like this before. We shoot in a few weeks, you'll get a shot at a big role to show off to the casting guys, and I'll get the cash I need to stay in town for another month, okay?